The Green Bay Packers. What went right for them this year? Overall, I think it was a disappointing season. Despite being 11-6, again, I talked about this on the solo show that I put out. It was a good year by all accounts. 11-6 is a good record, but when you look at them being, what was it, 2-5 against playoff teams, and one of those wins was against the Rams without Puka or Cooper Kupp. They were 1-5 in the division. They've lost, I believe they've lost 6 of the last 7, and the last 5 games they've played to the Lions. They're 2-4 against the Vikings the past 3 seasons. Like there's a Lions problem for the whole NFC North right now. But the Packers, to get to where they want to go, have to be able to win the division. And when you look up and down the roster right now, I think it's a good roster, but there's a lot of inconsistencies that they need to improve upon. One of the wins you could take away is that the defense was a lot better under Jeff Hafley. But another takeaway you can have is there were a lot of disappointing performances on the defense, particularly from the defensive line with Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, 2 of the biggest letdowns on the team. Kenny Clark really didn't show up at defensive tackle. Jaire Alexander didn't play again. He missed 10 or more games for the 3rd season in the last 4 years. Like there were breakouts. Like Evan Williams was awesome, and I thought that Edwin Cooper had a great end to the season. But Ziggy, when you looked at the Packers as a whole, let's stay on defense for now. The defensive side of the ball for the Packers, did you walk away more let down from those disappointments, or impressed, or I guess would you say encouraged from the strides they made with Hafley?
I mean, I think it's hard not to think that there were some substantial improvements for them this year. I think if you're disappointed, you're not looking at it quite right.
Sure.
I mean, you step back and look at Green Bay in 2013. The defense wasn't as bad as people think, right? They were 13th in opponent points per game. They were like an average-ish defense. This year's defense was much better. They were 6th in opponent points per game, 4th in opponents' yards per game, 6th in opponents' yards per play. Like they were excellent efficiency-wise. The problem with this Packers defense was while they generated a lot of big plays, particularly in the secondary, and they had a great plan against the rushing defense that killed them in 2023 was good. They weren't good at consistently stopping the pass. I mean, you see 4th in opponent interception throwing percentage. They did a great job forcing picks. 11th in sack percentage is not bad. 25th in opponent completion percentage. Teams knew that they could complete the ball against the Packers, and you saw it times when they needed to ice the game to stop a drive from happening. You saw it week 1 against the Eagles, and they never figured it out since. How do you stop teams from driving down the field? Because you can generate big plays, and that's great. That's really important. You can do great against the run, but if teams can complete passes against you effectively, the best teams in the NFL are going to be able to take advantage of that. The difference, though, I think, and the reason why I'm optimistic is last season we were thinking this defense needs a huge overhaul. They got the huge overhaul. Now they just need fine-tuning to make it better. Especially you saw second half of the year, players got more used to the system. I think the biggest disappointment was not on the defensive side of the ball.
Wait, all right, good. There's a good transition point there, but hold on. I just want to not yet. I wanted to ask you, would you bring back...
It's a teaser.
Would you bring back Jaire Alexander?
Oh, Ziggy,
That's a good teaser. Would you bring back Jaire Alexander?
What the Packers need to do in order to make this defense great, they need to go from good to great. That's what they need. I think that's one of the biggest things. They need to be a Super Bowl contender next year. In order to be great, they need multiple good corners added, and they need some improvements on the defensive line. I don't see a world in which this defense is great without Jaire coming back.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not saying it's a guarantee he's going to play well. There's a chance he comes back next year, is just hurt or doesn't look himself and sucks. But if you're looking at the worlds in which this Packers team has an elite defense, Jaire Alexander being healthy and playing like we all know he can play. When he played this year, he looked good for the most part. This is a guy, it's one of the few guys that can play at a cornerback 1 level that can lock down wide receiver 1s pretty consistently. You're not upgrading him. You know, there was a Packers blog that said he'd be addition by subtraction. I get that it sucked having him on your team this year, but I don't see how he made them a whole lot worse. The defense only gets better if Jaire comes back. The injuries weren't ones that make me worry about him being bad long term. I think you got to have him.
I mean, these guys, this Packers team's good. And I have no doubt in my mind next season they're also a playoff team. But coming into this year, what we expected from Jordan Love and the Packers was crazy. And I mean, I'm at fault for that too. Like the way he ended last year, all of last offseason, we're coming in here saying how this is a potential number 1 seed. And, if he can just play all 16 games like he did the last 10 games, like this team's going to be a force.
Yeah, as
they got
MVP quarterback.
Yeah, like they got four solid receivers. And I mean, they do. But then Jordan Love got hurt. It took him a while to get going. Like he had his downs. And like we did not think that this was going to be the team who couldn't beat the other contenders in their conference. We were looking at this team like they were the top level contender, not the team who couldn't beat the Lions or the Eagles or the Vikings. And it was just unfortunate because we're talking about them like this is going to be a 14, 15 win team. And we jumped the gun big time. I'm not like Jordan Love's a good quarterback and they'll be fine for the next look. They're a good team who'll be in the playoffs, but I don't know if I see Green Bay as a team who could win the Super Bowl.
I think that Ziggy's right in that it's more fine tuning for the Packers. I think the Vikings actually have more holes that need to be filled out. Where Green Bay, it's like if they get an impact pass rusher and if they get an impact receiver, this team can there can be a huge turn very quickly for them. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I think the path for the Packers to the Super Bowl is adding a couple elite players. It's not improving lots of spots. I think that's even more reason to not jettison elite talent that you've already got.
Yeah, no, I agree with the Jaire was second in the team in interceptions and passes defensed, and he didn't play the entire season. So like, if you let him go, Eric Stokes is leaving, so is Corey Ballantyne, or they're going to be free agents. I think if you even if it's just Lucas Van Ness or Rashawn Gary, like stepping up, you need someone to step up as an edge rusher because you got to get pressure. And then if you can address the cornerback room to any degree similar to what you did to the safeties, where a year ago they had no safeties. Now you got Bullard, Evan Williams, and Xavier McKinney. You have an embarrassment of riches at the safety position. A couple players away there. Offensively, go get a center, go get T. Higgins. And now, like, if you add T. Higgins to this team, and that's the guy I'm picking. I mean, you could also look at Chris Godwin or Devontae Adams, or Ziggy yelled at me when I said Tyreek Hill the other day. If you go add an alpha dog receiver to this room, I'm not really sure how you stop Green Bay.
Ziggy's my alpha dog.
Ziggy's an alpha dog.
And also, too, like this team had, yes, very disappointing, but they also had 11 wins. Like they were 11-6. And what are the chances that you ever play in a division where the second place team has 14 wins?
Well, it never happened.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, while it's obviously you wanted to go further than the 7th seed and the wild card round, like you made it further last year, I do think that this Packers team is probably in the second best position going forward in the North.
In the North?
Yeah.
They do need Jordan Love to play better, though.
They do, yes, they do.
That is
consistently better.
We can talk about all these different needs they have. If Jordan Love doesn't take another step forward, because this year, is it fair to say this year he took a step back?
I'd say so.
Right.
I think he played more consistently than he did in 2023, but it wasn't as good.
Yeah.
And you have to consider the injuries too. But when he played like that second half of the season healthy, it wasn't as good as the best, but it wasn't as bad as the worst either.
Yeah. So you need, and it's hard. Like Jack said off the top, it's hard to replicate the 10 games he had at the end of his 2024 season or 2023 season. Like that was, ridiculous.
Most quarterbacks never get close to that level.
Yeah.
We were out here saying, and as well as Packers fans too, like, oh, if he comes in and just does this from week one,
and we're be talking about him going to like 40 touchdowns and 3 interceptions.
Yeah. I think I had the Packers at like 14-2 or something like that.
But that's why it's kind of unfair that it was a disappointment. But again,
they had a good season.
They also didn't beat the Vikings, Lions, or Eagles.
Yeah, that can't happen.
And that can't happen to be a Super Bowl. Like they didn't deserve to win the Super Bowl this year.
No,
they weren't good enough.
They weren't good enough.
And
Love wasn't good enough.
And, Jaire didn't play against the Vikings or Lions. I forgot. I didn't realize that. He hasn't played against Jaire Alexander hasn't played against the Lions since 2022.
Is he scared? Scared of Amon?
Maybe he is scared.
He's scared of Amon-Ra?
But I don't think Green Bay's that far off, but they do need, there's a number of people on that roster that need to look themselves in the mirror and say, if we're going to win the Super Bowl, I need to be better. And I think that's a handful of guys that need to improve because they're capable of playing at a high level and didn't reach it last year. And that's me as a Viking fan talking. I'm not that's just the case in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm. Every Packers fan knows that they're not going to be mad at you for pointing that out. You got to, anytime you do worse than you did the previous season without losing anyone big, it's a disappointment.
Yep.
You got to do more.
One last thing on them. A big win they had was Brandon McManus came in and was amazing. He was 20 for 21 field goals, made all 30 extra points. That was a position that
was huge. Yeah.
That was he won them 2 games. I think his first 2 games walk-off winners. I believe they were for a position that screwed them over the year before against San Francisco. They got a big win there, and McManus was one of the best in the league from the time he joined. So that's another win for them.